Hey folks, Ken HACKATHORN here for Wilson Combat. And today I'm going to interview my buddy Bill Wilson, one of the fellow gun guys. And we're going to talk a little bit about him and particularly his business and how he got where he's at today. You know, a lot of people know about Wilson Combat and they know Bill Wilson's the man behind it, but they don't realize how he got where he's at and what kind of put him in this position in the gun culture. You know, Bill, I know we've talked before. You know, you started out interested in guns, shot as a kid. You shot PPC. You went on into IPSC and actually got real involved in the bowling pin game. You were one of the top bowling pin shooters. And I know that drove a lot of your emphasis on how you started working on guns and building guns. But from the point you sat down by yourself in your shop building, kind of take us through how that step by step, how that kind of grew in the early years of Wilson Combat.
Okay. I first started shooting competition with the PPC group down in Harrison, Arkansas. It was a law enforcement range. And because it was the only game in town. I mean, it was, you know, I just kind of, for whatever reason, got interested in shooting competition, and that was the only competition there was locally. So I shot with those guys for a while and started working on some revolvers, just, you know, learned to do some action jobs. And, you know, because just like we all know, I mean, first thing you think of when you want to get better, well, I need better gear. So I had to, you know, I had to take
practice.
Yeah. I had to start working on my gun to get a better gun. You know, was the first thing. That's how the whole gunsmithing thing started. Yeah. And so kind of progressed from you know that to heard about IPSC up in Columbia, Missouri. You know, it's like a 5-hour drive up there, but like a dumbass back then, you know, young kid. You know, I'd drive up there for the monthly shoot to shoot maybe a 30-round match and turn around and drive back. You know, do a 10-hour round trip to go shoot a 30, 40-round match. I mean, when we shot advanced military and shot 50 rounds, that was a big match. You know?
That was a big deal, big day.
Oh yeah. So went into the IPSC shooting, and that's what got me into the semi-autos, because I shot my first match up there with a Colt Python, and it was pretty apparent real quick that I can't compete with these semi-auto guys with my loading speed of a revolver. And then I didn't have a semi-auto, so I don't remember who I borrowed it from, but I borrowed a Browning high pipe from somebody for the second match. And then, you know, it was like, well, that worked out pretty well, other than the penalty for minor power factor.
Ripped your head off.
Yeah, and so by the third match, I'd actually acquired a Colt 1911 45, and kind of, you know, that's started working on them because, you know, again, you know, now I've got the base for what everybody's shooting, you know, all these, you know, because that's, you know, back then, Raw Walters, some of those guys shooting up there, shooting Packmeyers, you know, that, I mean, I could just drill over, you know, and there with my pretty much box stock government 45. So I had to make it better, you know, and that's kind of how the whole gunsmithing thing in the 1911 business started. It was, you know, working on my own gun. And then my very first customer, a guy by the name of Frank Triplett, you know, one day he said, well, you know, build me one, you know. And so, you know, that was kind of the start of it. Did some work on a gun for him, and next thing you know, it's another guy asking, and you know, then it comes to the point of, okay, well, I'm not making any money working with Dad in the jewelry and watch business, and I hate going to work every day, so I just will not be making any money working on guns and enjoying what I'm doing, you know. So that's how it all started out. I mean, in the back of Dad's jewelry store, you know, one-man shop, working on guns, you know. So that's kind of how as far as the evolution of how, you know, Wilson Combat kind of started.
That was kind of the time that the parts business started. You kind of got the idea for selling parts. Is that kind of when that came along?
It came along, you know, maybe a couple of years later or something like that. The early years, I'm just, you know, putting King Tappan sights or Bomar sights on guns, and you know, back then I was I didn't have the ability to checker stuff back then, so just Packmeyer grips and that kind of stuff. But really, the reason for getting into the accessory side of it was, you know, well, you know, I'm having to buy these onesie twosies, and I'm not getting much discount on it, and so, you know, start negotiating with vendors. You know, what if I buy, you know, 50 of them at a time or 100 of them at a time? You know, what kind of price I get? And then, you know, it's like, well, you know, I mean, those guys, if they're selling a lot of this stuff at this price, and then if I buy 50 of them, they give me this price, and if I buy 100, they give me this price, you know, the wheels start turning. It's like, you know, those guys they got a pretty good deal going. Maybe I should do parts and accessories, kind of thing. So that's how that got started. And for years, the accessory side of the business was the majority of the income of the company.
Still a pretty good piece of income.
Yeah, but we build so many guns now. It's actually not as big a chunk as it was. Say 10 years ago.
Let me ask you, at what point did you decide you needed employees or helpers? When did that kind of come along?
Well, one of the things when I started working on guns, right off the bat, that was the days of the Jim Hogues and like say the Packmeyers, you had and the Swensons and
King Gun Works,
all that, King Gun Works, and all that. And there was two things that were prevalent in those, and I'm not throwing any rocks at those guys; they're all my heroes, But what happened is you either got a gun that it wasn't quite done yet; you had to work on it to make it work. Hogues were a little bit bad about that back in those days. Or if you try to get a Swenson or a Packmeyer, you might not live long enough to ever get the gun back. The delivery time was so slow.
Absolutely.
And so to get to answer your question, that was kind of one of the things, I wanted to give quick delivery. I wanted the gun to be ready to go when they got it. So that's why, from day one, we did lots of test firing. We didn't do any of that, fire the gun one magazine and ship it kind of stuff, even from day one. And, want to turn them around quickly. Well, fortunately, successful enough buddies were saying, build me one, build me one, build me one. I couldn't keep up, and I didn't want to be like a Armand Swenson and, I'll get you a gun in 2 years kind of thing. So that was, I had to hire help out of necessity to try to keep that relatively quick delivery. Because back then, the new kid on the block, the way I looked at it, the way I can compete with these known guys like the Swensons and the Hogues and the Kings and the Packmeyers and Clarks and all these people. Yeah, I got to ship a gun that people don't have problems with. It's got to do what they bought it to do, and I got to get it to them faster than all these other guys. And so, therefore, I had to hire people to help. And I was very fortunate from the early time. Made some extremely smart hires as far as gunsmiths, Dave Coley and Ron Phillips and, Jim Wilson. And, early on, I hired some people that turned out to be extremely talented.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Within the pistol smithing community, some of those people you hired are somewhat legends now as far as the guys and their skills and their abilities and the things they kind of pioneered as far as the trigger jobs and all that stuff. Yeah. And I know that for years and years, you guys basically worked on Colts and then eventually Springfield Armories. And as the period expanded, but I know maybe in the early 90s. When was it you finally said, look, I'm going to start making my own guns? What kind of led to that and how did that go?
Okay. Well, what led to it is, as you know, some of the 1911 manufacturers kind of went through some phases where the quality of the gun was a little.
It wasn't a little bad. Some of them were terrible.
Anyway, so we wanted to build a better quality gun. So that was the primary reason to start building our complete gun. We wanted to build a better quality gun that we could build starting with somebody else's base gun, and that we started that in '96. That's when we started building complete guns, and like I say, it was more of a quality ability to control the quality of it. And to get some features that you couldn't get, it's been fairly recent in the scheme of things. When Colt did stuff, earth shattering, like put beaver tails on them and stuff. Back in those days, if you bought a Colt, this is the way it's kind of like the Henry Ford deal. You can have it any way you want as long as it's black.
Black, yeah. And you're right. I can remember when you started offering guns that were basically Wilson Combat made guns, and I think you told me back then that actually because you were limited on sources like slides and frames, you actually went out to some of the other companies and the same thing, negotiate. I want you to make me frames to my specs and slips. I remember this time. Wasn't Kimber one of your vendors of frames or slides?
In the very early days, yeah.
And then I think didn't Smith & Wesson even made you some components at one time, didn't they?
No, we just bought forgings.
Okay, you bought forgings.
Forgings from Smith & Wesson.
But I remember at the time, I mean, everybody saw a giant improvement, if you will, in the functionality. I mean, let's face it, I can remember back in the day, you and your guys complaining that if you get a pistol in, that the hammer pin hole and the sear pin hole are not parallel, no matter what you do, you got a problem gun.
Yeah, you just can't,
or the breech phase off center. And I remember once you started making the Wilson combat guns, that much of that issue tended to go away.
Well, that and if you start with a loose slided frame fit, there's no way you can properly fix that.
Yeah.
I mean, in the old days, we squeezed the slides and we beat the rails and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a Band-Aid. It's not the solution to the problem.
It was better than what you were faced with. Yeah. And I can remember, and again, you can correct me, but at what time frame? I know when you finally said, the only way to do this right is I'm going to make all my stuff. And if I'm going to do it, there's not going to be any MIM or cast parts. Everything is going to be top quality. What was the time frame when you made that move?
That would have been probably in the mid 2000s somewhere. I'm just going to throw it out of time frame, 2005-ish. Somewhere. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, and you've been pretty. I tell people, look, if you look, obviously, you've kind of driven the bus on the magazine market as far as producing magazines. I mean, there's always been little issues with the magazines that weren't always up to par, and you've continually improved the program. Yeah. And the other thing I've noticed is the guns you guys are building now. Most people don't realize just something as minor as how the ejector is mounted to the frame. We all know there was a problem with the one leg shearing off and the thing is spinning. You've addressed that issue. I mean, there's a lot of people inside the gun, things inside the gun. I think a lot of people don't realize how far you guys have stepped up to the plate to correct or make it more of a beneficial move.
I think a lot of that comes from myself and a lot of my key people being shooters.
Yeah.
And having access to shooters like you and getting your feedback on stuff. Yeah. I mean, let's face it, some of the gun companies don't have a lot of gun people within their employ. And so they wouldn't know about things like that because they don't really use the product, or they're not gun people. They go play golf on the weekends, so they go to the shooting range or go hunting or something like that.
Or go to a match.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was impressed when I came last year to the Bearville Bash to the fact that, one, you had so many employees walking around in there with guns on. Good sign. Mm-hmm. And then how many of you guys you've got there that shoot and they compete? I mean, they're really serious. They're out there really putting the gun through the paces. And despite what people may think good about a competition, if you got a problem with a gun, it's going to show up real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know that as of probably the last couple of years, you have really, I mean, for example, your rifle business is really pretty serious business now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's probably the fastest growing segment of the company right now.
Yeah. I remember when you launched the shotgun business, you bought Scattergun Technologies. That's been a good business. We know that shotgun market hasn't been kind of what it was at one time, but with the restrictive legislation now in places like California, some other states, I predict you're going to see that shotgun thing remember, everything goes in 25-year cycles.
Yeah.
That'll probably come back. Somebody told me the other day, I didn't even know, you guys actually make precision barrels for 1022 Rugers. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we do a lot of barrel stuff, and that's an area that we're growing.
Yeah, and I understand you sell, besides building barrels for your own rifle, you sell quite a few barrels.
A lot of barrels, a lot of uppers. Yeah.
Yeah. So
right now, as far as I know, we offer ARs in more calibers than anybody in the industry. I think right now we're shipping 20 different calibers, and with right now 4 in the hopper. So
that's wild.
Yeah.
And then obviously we talked about earlier in one of the segments, you've kind of said, look, the future, we understand, and where the millennial generation is the polymer frame striker bar. For example, you've launched into Glocks, and you're going to get into Glocks pretty big.
Oh yeah, we're doing a lot of polymer gun stuff, and you're going to see.
And I'm going to guess we're going to see that market kind of flourish with Wilson Combat.
Oh yeah, we'll be doing a lot more Glock stuff. We'll be doing SIG stuff and et cetera.
SIG 320, obviously the gun of the future.
Well,
and I think all of us realize you are probably responsible for the resurgence of interest in the Beretta 92 with those special edition guns you guys have done.
Yeah, that's been a very successful project. I mean, you and I both have been Beretta fans for years, you know, as well as I do. I mean, it's probably inherently the most reliable platform of anything on the market,
Right.
you know, and they're so soft shooting and typically accurate and all that.
Yeah.
And,
I would agree with you. I think out of the box, the Beretta 92 is one of the most reliable handguns out there. I will tell you that when I got a chance to be one of the beta testers on the new X9, I was appalled at how reliable that gun is. I think at the very least, it will match a Beretta 92, maybe exceed it in reliability.
Yeah, we've not had much issues with that platform.
And then the other thing, which I think most people don't quite realize, is the ammunition company's become a pretty big part of Wilson Combat.
Well, we sell quite a bit of ammo, but where it really helps us is being able to load our own test fire ammo.
Yeah, because you guys shoot up, how much, on the average, what do you think you shoot up test fire ammo, say, a week? How many rounds? Do you have any idea what you go through?
I have no idea. I just know on handguns, if you had to average it out, the average number of rounds we fire a handgun testing it is very close to 100 rounds. Because our standard protocol is 70 some odd rounds. That's if everything goes smooth. You know, there's not a hiccup. We don't retest anything. And, you know, there's some of them that we end up having to step back and make an adjustment and then retest part of the protocol. So I would say right around 100 rounds is the average number of rounds that goes through a handgun.
Wow.
And, you know,
and we know that's not very common in this industry.
I mean, there's some gun companies that don't even test fire every single gun at all,
right?
Much less.
And the ones you do is only 3 or 5 shots or so.
Yeah. And the rifles, we got a pretty good protocol on our rifles, which is a little different. I mean, the AR platform, it typically works or it doesn't work. You know, there's not much gray area on function of an AR like there is in 1911. 1911, you know, stuff can show up when you test differently. Different things can show up. But basically with an AR, if it feeds and functions a couple of rounds off the top of the magazine and you fire the last round, it goes to bolt stop reliably with a loose hold on the gun, it'll typically run the ones in the middle. You don't have to go out there and dump 30 round mags to prove out an AR-15. You shoot 3 or 4 off the top, 1 or 2 off the bottom. Do that a few times, and if everything works on both ends, it's going to work in the middle.
When you started off, you had Dave and Jim as your employees, and it was that way for quite a while.
Dave, Ron was second.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as gunsmiths are concerned.
How many employees do you have today?
Oh, 160 something. I don't know the exact number, but between 160 and 170, somewhere in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where do you see in the future? I mean, I know you've always got a project brewing. I know that. But
I have too many projects right now, Ken.
I know you offer a product line of holsters. Mm-hmm. You actually now you're offering some holsters that are basically branded for you by some other manufacturers, and I think that's a smart move. But do you have other things out there that you kind of in the back of your mind you can say this is the direction I like to go, or you're going to stop where you're ahead?
I can give our viewers a couple little previews. I mean, there's some pretty exciting AR stuff in the hopper that I'm working on right now. We introduced the 458 hammer, as you know, a while back. Which is a very powerful package in an AR-15.
Right.
So may see some other stuff that's similar to that. And, let's face it, the X9 has been a tremendous success. And if we can ever catch up on back orders, probably going to be some different variants of the X9 come down the pike eventually.
Oh.
And, the polymer stuff, we got some pretty exciting plans for the SIG 320. So stay tuned on that.
I think that's a great plan. Let me ask you one more question. When you decided to get into the AR carbine market, were you surprised at how this pistol caliber carbine thing and the acceptance of your AR carbine, your AR-9, did you expect that acceptance and popularity, or did it surprise you a little bit?
Well, sometimes timing is everything. It's like, I'll give you an example of company bad timing, for example. We came out and started popularizing a cartridge called 7.62 by 40, and I mean, supersonic wise, it does everything better than a 300 blackout. But unfortunately, we introduced that very closely to the same time the 300 blackout come out. And so, bad timing, maybe not the ideal name for the cartridge, various factors, never a really big success of an extremely good product. It's one of those deals where sometimes, you hit the timing right. It's like.
And the pistol caliber carbine.
Caliber carbine was one of those. I mean, just, at the time, we got that thing on the market. That's when everybody just all of a sudden was interested in pistol caliber carbines. So we had really good timing on that one.
There you go.
And I think we had really good timing on the EDC X9 because that was a point where it's all about concealed carry, and we know the most popular carry gun on the market's a Glock 19. So now we've got a 1911-ish gun that basically is the same size as a Glock 19. So it's been a big success.
Wilson Combat's a company that's just celebrated its 40th anniversary.
We're in year 41 right now.
41 now, yeah. But I guess the question is, 40 years ago, did you ever remotely envision that you would be in the position you're in now as far as the success of Wilson Combat?
Oh,
is that a dream you had that?
When I was a one-man shop, I was just hoping that I'd be successful enough that when I went to matches, I didn't have to stay at Motel 6 and eat McDonald's.
Well, you've done pretty well, and you've got a great product line.
Yeah. Well, we've got a really good crew at the company.
Yeah,
I mean, you're trying, you're almost saying, I've done all this, but I'm just one piece of this puzzle. I mean, we have got trust me, we've got some extremely talented and motivated and loyal people.
I've been very
company.
impressed with the people I've met and some of the guys you got in key position. And they go above and beyond. They're just super dedicated, hardcore folks. And that's not real common in a lot of businesses today in America. So, hey, folks, you know a little bit more about Wilson Combat and Bill Wilson and where he came from and where he's going. And most importantly, you want to find out more about Wilson Combat and all the good things in the future, check out their YouTube channel, subscribe. A lot of good info. Good luck to you. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you again.
Enjoyed it.